Hello, I'm Yvonne with Highland Realty, and today we have with us Paul Adwar from 21st Century Home Inspections. You know, I always like to educate both my buyers and my sellers, and today's topic is going to be, when do you need a home inspection? And it's going to be for both buyers and sellers. So without further ado, Paul, it's all yours.
Thank you, Yvonne. I appreciate you having me on today.
Sure. How long have you been in the business?
I've been in the business for a little over 8 years, but I've been in the construction industry for over 25 years.
Oh, wow.
It was for me, it was a natural migration into home inspections because I had learned homes, seeing how homes were built from the dirt all the way up to the roof. So after
Mhm.
seeing how mechanical systems like heating and air were being installed and watching them, and electrical systems, and I do have an electrical background myself. I studied electrical courses, so I have that in my repertoire of talents.
Mhm.
And learning the do's and don'ts about plumbing and all the different facets, and how a house is put together, and what you're looking for to have a house right. It showed me how to spot a house that isn't right, that wasn't put together
Mm.
right, maybe that was jury rigged, that people did things to save themselves money, but they didn't do it correctly.
Wow. Yeah, I see. Well, you know what? I wanted you to explain to viewers today why a seller would need to do a home inspection. Normally, you see the buyers do it, but there is benefits for the seller. Can you explain that?
Oh, yes, definitely. There's many, many benefits for a seller. Number one, the biggest thing is that if you're going into contract with a buyer as the seller, you want that transaction to close smoothly. You don't want hiccups or any potential problems for that transaction to fall apart. So, with that being said, if you have many items that are wrong with the house, that might be a big turnoff to the potential buyer, because they're thinking, if we're finding all these things, maybe there's even more things that are done. I always use an example. If you're going over to look at a car that someone's selling, and they've got all these food wrappers and juice containers in the back, maybe they got some old clothing back there, and you're looking at it, it might be a beautiful car, but you go, this person, they don't keep their own life up. Maybe they don't keep the car up. And it's the same thing with a home. If a buyer sees it, buyer gets an inspection report and he sees 10, 15, 20 items on the report, whether small or large, that might be a deterrent for the buyer to continue on with that transaction and move on. The second thing for a seller, the major benefit is, when I'm doing an inspection for the sellers, I'll find everything wrong. Sometimes there's minimal to nothing wrong, but I will find the things that are wrong. They have an opportunity before the buyer gets to see these issues. So when the buyer comes through, if the seller has already taken care of, maybe there's some GFCI outlets, ground fault circuit interrupter outlets, that needed to be replaced in the kitchen or the bathrooms. Maybe there's a smoke detector that's broken, needs to be changed. There's no carbon monoxide tester in the house. They run down to Home Depot and buy one for $45. These are all items that the homeowner can take care of themselves. And if it's not an item that they can take care of themselves, they could hire a professional for less than $200 to take care of a lot of these items. Whereas if the buyer gets his inspector in there, the inspector is going to recommend getting these professionals, and they're going to ask the professional for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to make repairs. And so then the buyer is going to come back in escrow and say, we'll purchase your house, but we want a $20,000 credit. And then the seller is going to say, well, why is it so high? Well, here's the report. See all the items in this report? You probably should have taken care of them. So it's very important. And some of the items that I find, as I had just mentioned, a homeowner can take care of themselves. when I do seller inspections, I'll go through these items with the seller and say, see this here? You could repair this yourself without any safety factors. I will not show somebody how to do something if I feel it is not safe for them to do. So, for instance, sometimes I find, just as an example, in the garage, you have these reversing sensors. There are two sensors, one on the left side of the garage door, one on the right side of the garage door. They're there for in the event that, say, someone walks in, like maybe a child, and the door is coming down, the door is supposed to reverse. Well, I find more times than not, the door doesn't reverse. And so I can show the homeowner, you've got to check to see that these beams are lined up. Usually what happens is they've brought stuff into the garage, they're loading the garage up, and one of the sensors gets knocked out of alignment, and now it's not functioning. So I show them how to do a very minor repair. Now, on the other hand, if a professional's called in, he might charge just for the service call $150, plus for his time another $75. So now you got a $225 repair when it could have been done by the homeowner if the homeowner caught it for nothing, for the price of zero. So there's $225 off the price of the inspection that they had to pay. And that's only one simple thing. There's at least, I would say, 30 to 40 items in a home that a seller can repair or replace by themselves without any risk of danger or making matters worse. They're very simple items to take care of. And again, it all goes back to, you want to keep the transaction on track. You don't want them to say, I'm having second thoughts. That report made me think twice. That's not good. So what that means is, for the price of $500, they're risking a potential $1 million purchase.
Yeah, that's a good point. Wow, Paul, you empower and you educate. That's great. That's really great, because I've been through it, where the buyer does their own inspections and they're ready to back out. They're already nervous, particularly if it's a first-time home buyer. They're scraping every penny to buy that house, and then to find out these extra items, that can really be a deterrent. Let me ask you this, Paul, because on the flip side, I've seen buyers place offers and be so desperate that they'll waive all inspections. What is your advice on that?
To me, that's a major mistake. And even though I do understand they fell in love with the home, they've walked through it, they say, this is the floor plan that I love, I could see myself in this house, everything is wonderful. The fact is, there could be things that are hidden in that house, and my job is to find the secrets that house is holding. And it could end up costing them in the long run an awful lot of money. And even though a seller is supposed to disclose everything that they know about and are aware of, well, most sellers, I would say probably 99.9, don't go under the house to inspect the crawl space. So they would never know if maybe one of the posts, the foundation posts, have slipped out from years of just people walking on the floor and slipped out, and now is endangering the whole flooring system from collapsing. That could be an unbelievable expensive repair for the new buyer. And if they're using all their funds just to get in, which I do get that, they're using everything and scraping everything together, there is no room to put out another $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to get that foundation properly set. So, so in those circumstances, or the roof, for instance, maybe they have the roof trusses. I go up into the attic and I'll look at all the trusses, and maybe I'll find one or two that aren't being properly supported. Now, you've got to get a team in there to fix that. It's not going to be 20, 30,000, but it adds up really quick. So all these items that could have been taken care of should have been. Now, as far as in regards to when you said about the buyers waiving inspections, waiving an inspection for a seller really isn't or not waiving it isn't a deterrent for them to accept the offer. So for instance, if a couple comes in, they're offering full price, and it says contingent upon appraisal, upon loan approval, and upon inspection, the seller isn't going to say, "Ooh, wait a second, they want to inspect it? Okay, the deal's off. We're rejecting this offer," and that just doesn't happen. It's the buyers don't want to appear desperate, and just for themselves, even forgetting about the appearance, is they don't want to get into a potential money pit. And a lot of people have seen that old Tom Hanks movie,
Yes.
the money pit, and nobody wants to get into it. And I tell people too, peace of mind, POM, peace of mind is so valuable. You can't even put a price tag on it. Knowing that you're going to sleep your first night in your new home, and knowing that things are functioning properly, and that your roof isn't going to cave in on you, and your hot water heater wasn't jury rigged to where it's going to explode on you in the middle of the night. Just knowing that, it's almost the same reason why people put an alarm system in. You hope you never ever have to use it. And I used to actually install alarm systems, and I told people every single time, I said, I hope you never ever have to use the system. And some people would look at me and look funny, like, wait a second, you just put it in, now you tell me I shouldn't use it? I say, no, I hope you never need to use it, because
Sure.
you're arming the alarm, and you have that peace of mind that if the door was to open in your home, the alarm would go off, the police will be called, and you have a sense of safety and protection. Same thing with the inspection. You have a sense of safety and protection for 1/10, actually less than 1/10 of the price of the house. When you compare $1 million home purchase to a $500 insurance policy, it's, how do you beat that? How do you beat
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. That leads me to my next question, Paul. Sometimes buyers get nervous about having multiple inspections because of the cost. Can you explain how your costs run on a home?
Well, on a small home, and we consider a small home under 2,000 square feet, we charge just $499, and
Mhm.
that's a comprehensive report. We do the roof, we do the attic, we do the home itself, and we do the crawl space. If there's a foundation and there's no crawl space, we'll go around the whole entire foundation and inspect it for any sizable cracks, or any kind of shifting that the home might have done. We also use levels in the home to make sure, again, the house hasn't shifted, to see. For a little bit of more of the average size home, we're talking over from 2001 to 3,000 square feet, we charge $535. And then for the larger homes that are over 3,000, we charge $599.
Let me ask you if you could briefly explain what are some of the things that you look at in a home inspection? You mentioned the roof and the garage, but what about inside the home?
Oh,
What
I
would,
look at everything. There's nothing that I haven't seen that I'm not making notes on that is substantial. I'm looking at the entire plumbing system. So I'm checking drains. I'm checking for things that people look at me like, what are you doing? I'm running the water, and then I'm stopping it. Then I'm running it again. Then I'm stopping it. People say, are you checking to see if the valves work? The controls. I go, no, no, no. I'm checking to see how long it's taking for this water to drain. A lot of people don't think about that. They don't drain. Yeah, I guess I want to know if those pipes are clogged up. I'm checking the toilets to make sure there's no clogs in there. So again, it's the time and how quick I can reflush it to where
yeah.
the water is dispersing. I'm checking the whole entire heating system. We use a thermal imaging gun that I could measure the temperature that's coming out of the registers in each room. And
Sure.
in a case that I just had, the temperature that was coming out of the system versus the room was only about 4 degrees off, which isn't good. It should be minimum 15 to 20 degrees difference. And so I found out that the cooling system in the air conditioner wasn't working properly. And I made notations of that. I said, you need to have a licensed contractor come out, to take care of the cooling. Now, again, comparing buyer to seller, if the seller takes care of it, The average is about 150 to 175 to recharge the whole system, to do like a 20-point checkup, make sure it's functioning properly. If the buyer gets that information, they might want to redo the whole entire cooling system. It's like, oh, I don't like these pipes. The insulation on these pipes is cracking a little bit. Go ahead and change it, and then they get a bill for $1,000. So now you have $150 that the seller could have paid versus the buyer turning in a bill for almost $1,000. So what's the difference? Well, different motivations. The seller's going to get working up to par, up to standard, and then the buyer's going to say, well, since the seller's paying for it, let's go crazy. Let's get an estimate for $1,000, and we'll have them we're going to change filters. We're going to change, this grill has some rust on it. The fan blade has rust. Let's change it. Let's just change everything. So, there's a difference. But going back to, being checked, I checked for the electrical system. Was any wiring done improperly? I've got testers. And one of the reasons why I call my company 21st Century is because we use state-of-the-art testing devices. We have testers that we can check to see if the wires are reversed, or are they in the locations where they're supposed to be? Or is there a ground wire? You need a ground wire to prevent shock. Is that hooked up? You'd be amazed how many times I find it is not hooked up. So then I've got to tell the seller, you need to have an electrician come out and fix this out, and I'll put some blue tape by it. This outlet, this outlet, this outlet. You need to check the wiring, have an electrician check the wiring. Again, it goes back to their electrician might charge $100 to $150. The buyer's electrician, and all bets are off how much they're going to charge.
Yeah.
So everything in the home is checked. I check for the insulation up in the attic. Do they have a proper level of insulation, or is it, subpar? Is it below the required amount for California? So there isn't too much that I don't check. In fact, everything. I check the walls. I'm looking for cracks in the walls. That tells me that there might have been some shifting. So one thing leads me to another. So if I go into a home and I see that things weren't maintained, they've got a 45 or a 50-year-old smoke detector. Uh-oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
Because that tells me these people didn't keep up with things. And it's not just that. I'll look for other indications of lack of maintenance, because it is important that the house gets maintained. And, and we were talking about, how I enjoy teaching and instructing people. For first-time buyers, I'll go around that whole entire house and say, this is where your main water shutoff is, because the seller's not going to, because the seller never meets the buyer. So no one's going to show them where these things are. And I've had first-time buyers that they couldn't think. They say, "Oh, thank you so much for showing me. I would have never known about these things." I show them where their main circuit breaker box is. I go, "You know where the breaker box is in the house? It's right there in the garage. We saw it, but you don't know where the main is, do you?" And they go, "No." And I say, "Let me show you where it is." And I'll show them. And I say, this one here is the most important. This will kill the power to your entire house. The water main, in the event your house is flooding, this is the first place you want to go. The very first place. Shut off all the water, because you don't know where else it might be flooding from. If there's an earthquake, you want to turn off the gas. This is where your gas switch is, where you turn off the gas at the meter. I would say probably 95% of people have no idea. So if there was a major earthquake and PG&E is warning, turn off your gas, they're not sending technicians out to everybody's house to turn off the gas.
Sure.
There's too many houses. So you have to do it yourself, and you need to know where it is. And so I show people that. So there's so much to know about a house. Even if you've lived in a house, there's things to know about the house that people don't know. And like I said, it's everything from the minor to the major.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Paul. One last question. Sometimes the buyer does talk the seller into making repairs. Do you ever come out to verify that something that you said needed repair is repaired correctly?
We have done that on occasion. We do have an additional charge of $75, so we don't charge the whole full bore price.
Yeah.
And so we will do a complete inspection on all the items listed. So yeah, so if the buyer does, and we just actually had that about 2 weeks ago, the buyer was very, very nervous, and he was a doubting Thomas. He did not believe that this buyer was going to actually do these repairs. And he said, I'll pay you the $75, please verify. And I went out, and sure enough, everything was, done and proper. And then I take pictures as well. So one thing in our
Oh,
reports
wow.
is I take on the average anywhere from, I would say, between 50 and 100 pictures. So
Oh,
that
wow.
report
Okay.
has everything, and it's not necessarily only things that are defective. It's just to show the status of these things. So, because sometimes people want to be comforted to the point of, well, you say you did a roof inspection, but all you put in the report was roof was inspected, everything appears, fully functional and proper.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's what it says in a lot of people's reports. We go a little bit more detailed, and but I'll also have pictures to back it up, so I can show.
Sure.
And then when there's things like on a lot of houses, the flashing that goes around vent caps, when it's loose or it's lifted up or bent, I'll take several pictures of that to indicate this is what needs to be replaced and repaired. So so the pictures, so our reports are anywhere from 49 on a low to 52 pages long.
Wow, that's
So it's,
pretty extensive.
oh
Uh,
yeah.
That's good to know, Paul. I tell you what, why don't you share with our audience how they can reach you if they're interested in an inspection?
Sure. Well, the best way initially is to reach out to me via phone or text, and that number is 925-324-1296. From that point, I can give you all the information you could possibly want to know.
Oh, great. You know, Paul, I really thank you for taking the time. It sounds like you you're a very hard worker. You give very comprehensive reports. So I really appreciate you taking the
Sure.
time to
Definitely.
educate future buyers and sellers, because it fits in with my motto at Highland Realty. We believe it's not just a house, it's your legacy.
Yes, for
Thank
sure.
you.
All righty. Thanks, Yvonne.